I met my stepdaughter when she was 5, and I married her mom when she was 6. She's 26 now and just got married. Her biological father is a complete waste of skin and one of the biggest flakes you can imagine, but she still loves him. He comes into her life, love bombs her, then leaves again, leaving it to myself and my wife to pick up the pieces. It was tough, but we did it. My wife passed away 4 years ago, right before the virus, and my stepdaughter pretty much cut me and her brothers out of her life. She had her biological father and didn't need me. I'm not going to lie, it hurt. Her brothers are 14 and 12. They're not invited to her child-free wedding. My parents, who have always treated her as a granddaughter, were not invited. I was invited, but was tired of the disrespect, so I RSVP'd no. She called me to try to talk me into being there in case something came up with her father. I declined and said I had plans for that day. I took my parents and sons to Disneyland for the weekend. I wanted them to have great memories as a family on kind of a crappy day. You guessed it. Due to the fires in the West, his flight was delayed and he missed the wedding. All of us started getting texts and calls starting on Thursday after she figured out he wasn't going to make it. But we were already on the road, and I, for one, wasn't interested in picking up. I guess somewhere deep down, she knew he wasn't going to show up and had been counting on me being there, like always, to cover for him. I heard the wedding was kind of a crap show. She was upset and ruined her makeup, which ruined the pictures, which upset her more. It was just an avalanche of little things gathering into a wreck. Her family and friends have been talking crap about me on social media and even contacting us. My boys are fine, but my parents think I need to apologize for being an a-hole and choosing a vacation over her wedding. Not the a-hole. You didn't choose a vacation over her wedding. You chose your own self-worth over being a doormat. You chose your sons over a stepdaughter who has consistently cast you aside for a deadbeat. I hope your sons had a great vacation. Not the a-hole. She cut you out of her life and only comes around when her father is a crap show and whenever she needs something and doesn't seem to care about your feelings whatsoever. Not to mention the grandparents and brothers as well. Not the a-hole. This is not just about you. It's also about the rest of the family, whom she cut out of the wedding. She should have invited her brothers and your parents, and at the very least had both you and bio dad walk her down the aisle. Telling you point blank that you'd be the backup was a slap in your face. It was a good idea to take your sons on vacation and make up for a little bit of the disappointment all of you must have felt. She needs to realize that you're not an on-demand backup parent. Sue and me were neighbors and BFFs since we were toddlers. We were BFFs from first grade to college. In college, she met a great guy. He proposed to her on graduation, and I 100% was giddy. I was her maid of honor. They had a baby a year or so later, and 10 months ago, I woke up with my fiancé to her screaming and knocking at my door at 2 a.m. She claimed her husband kicked her out due to being on her phone while he was trying to sleep. He's a doctor, so I was like, high stress? She left the kid with him, which I thought was odd. I told her to crash on our couch for the weekend. Me and my fiancé work, but we have a new puppy, so we have a camera to check up on her. Something I told Sue about. My phone got a notification about human movement, and I checked to see her and some strange guy sitting on our couch. I'm not being R, trust me. I don't care. Me and my fiancé and my BFF and her husband are white. This guy was black. I called her, which I watched her ignore, and her and this random guy proceeded to have S in our living room. I could care less, but her and her husband are not in an open relationship. I confronted her about it when I got home. She cried, packed up, and left for a hotel. A month later, she claimed she was pregnant all over Facebook. Her and her husband seemed to reconcile until the baby girl was born. She's black and looks nothing like their first kid. I saw her husband was shocked outside smoking when I went to visit the hospital. He just said, "I do not think that baby is mine," and she said if I pursue a DNA test, she'll divorce me. I told him about her and this random guy, and I have the screenshots that the camera took to prove it. I showed him, and the guy is a friend of a friend. He knew him. He was just gutted. He asked me what to do. I told him to leave her, 100%. We are all in our 30s. It's not acceptable. They are married. They had a kid together. He did. My ex-BFF called me screaming threats at me, saying how she was served with divorce papers and would need to do a custody hearing for the first kid. She said, and I quote, "XXX needs to be a big man and raise our kids." I responded, "He is. He's raising the kid you two had, not some other guys. He needs to man up. It doesn't matter." That comment blew me away. It matters. Am I the a-hole for advising him to leave her? She's bombarding me with texts and messages on social media, saying how I made her a single mom and how she will need to move in with her parents due to no longer having her husband's salary. Edit. I wish I told her husband. I figured that maybe it was a one-time thing. I feel bad. Not the a-hole. She made herself a single mom. She cheated. End of. Your friend had a right to know, and he probably knew anyways because the baby was black. This way, he gets to do the divorce and seek custody. Not the a-hole for advising to leave, but you're the a-hole for not telling him beforehand. You could have easily told him when she had S in your home, but instead you let him be with her for the whole pregnancy. Not the a-hole. You are not the one forcing her to have S with another guy that's not her husband in your living room. I, 27 female, recently got engaged to my fiancé, 29 male, and we're super excited to start planning our wedding. My fiancé proposed while we were on holiday, so we kept it off social media until we could tell our families in person. When it came time to telling my family, they congratulated us, but after that, they weren't very excited or even that interested. While I understand that nobody is going to care about our wedding like we do, it still hurt that they weren't excited, at least initially. My sister, 25 female, did ask to see my ring, as she used to work in a jewelry store. When she saw that I have an emerald and diamond ring, she got very snippy and said that as emeralds are her birthstone, I shouldn't have an emerald ring at all. I brushed this off because I just wanted to stay excited and happy, but she kept on bringing it up and saying things like, "It's not even that nice of a ring." As soon as she said that, I saw red. My fiancé got me the ring of my dreams, and I know how hard he worked to save for it and to find it for me. Her saying that it's not even that nice made me so angry that I snapped back that at least I have a ring, and I'm not bitter and jealous because someone else got engaged and she's single. I also said that it wouldn't hurt her to just pretend to be happy for me for once. My parents then stepped in and said that I was over the line and made it personal when it didn't need to be. At this point, we just left to go tell Grandma about the engagement, and she was super excited for us. I haven't spoken to my parents or sisters since, and they haven't reached out either. I think I might have been the a-hole by commenting on her relationship status, but my fiancé says that she was repeatedly out of line, and I just shut it down. I'm interested to see what objective strangers think, though. Not the a-hole. Diamonds aren't my birthstone, but I still have one in my ring. She doesn't own emeralds. She was just being jealous and bitter, and you called her on it. Congratulations on your engagement. I'm sure your ring is beautiful. Your sister must have been really bad at selling jewelry. What, was nobody else allowed to buy emeralds? Not the a-hole. With family like that, I'd elope. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. I'm guessing your sister is the golden child, huh? It's okay for her to have a go at you with her jealous rant, but parents jump in the second their precious daughter gets any flack for it. If I were you, I would keep a tight lip on any wedding plans with your family. Don't let your jealous sister and your enabling parents ruin your big day. My grandmother was such a kind soul. She would help anyone who asked, no questions asked. It was no secret within our family that my grandmother was well off. This combination of not wanting financially and kindness had led to people taking advantage of her. No one takes advantage of her more than my uncle. My uncle was always asking for money, be it for school, rent, or a high-ticket item he wanted. My dad put a stop to it, but after he passed, it got a lot worse. My uncle got more aggressive when it came to asking for handouts. He made her co-sign for both a new Jeep and a home for him and his wife. The home in question was a massive 2,400 square foot home. By no means could they afford this home. She signed against threats to have her grandchildren cut off. Now, whenever my aunt and uncle wanted a new TV or wanted to go on vacation, they just wouldn't pay their bills and let it fall on my grandma to pay. His kids were taught, if you want anything, don't ask me, go see grandma. As they got older, they started to treat her just as poorly. As my grandmother got older, we started to encourage her to move to a community where her close friends were. My uncle had other plans, though. By this time, his kids were getting older, so they pressured her when she was over 80 to sell her current home and get another mortgage in a city so that his kids would have a free place to stay as they went to school. She bought the house my uncle instructed, which of course was a large 5-bedroom house for him to visit and his kids and her. This is when my grandmother finally stopped supporting him financially. She was miserable in that house, and as his kids started to move in, she had to do everything for them. My grandmother threatened my uncle for the first time. I'm not entirely sure what she said, but after that, he made his own mortgage payments by taking out a second mortgage. One day, my grandmother invited me for a visit. We went and had a great time catching up, and then near the end, my grandmother explained that a change was being made in her will, and my uncle was no longer getting anything she owned. She said she felt like she had already given him his inheritance and then some. With my dad passed, it would come to me. She only gave me 2 conditions. Don't tell anyone, and don't give a cent to my uncle. When she did pass, and as she said, everything was in my name, my uncle was calling me furious, going on and on about how that was his money and his family was counting on it to support themselves. And as my grandmother said, I didn't give in. I started to charge rent to his kids who were staying in the city. Only half of what I could, but they still acted like I was robbing them. My uncle, aunt, and his kids have been calling me a cheat and saying I stole their inheritance. He demands it anytime we meet and says they can't keep up with all their payments and I should help family first like Grandma did. I still refuse to help at all. Not the a-hole, but I think it's time to stop giving them a break on rent, don't you? Not the a-hole. Your grandma was right. Uncle got his inheritance and then some. If they can't afford their lifestyle, they don't get to ask for handouts. They can downsize and adapt their lifestyle to their budget. At this point, if they don't stop harassing you, you should evict them and rent the house out at market value. Not the a-hole. Your uncle is an aggressive, manipulative mooch, and he thinks that if he threatens you, or rather manipulates you, that you will catapult and give him what he wants. Don't. Issue an eviction notice, or notice to vacate. You can up the rent to market levels first if you want, and when he doesn't pay the proper amount, then issue the eviction. I think I would handball this to your lawyer, and your uncle can deal with them. It may cost you to have a lawyer, but it will probably cost you less than if you try and deal with your uncle yourself. I love taking pictures. My father was a photographer, and while I've never made a living at it, I enjoy photography. My ex hated having her picture taken, but humored me by being my model ever since we met in college. I had thousands of pictures of her. My walls of my home are full of pictures I've taken on business trips and vacations. I've assisted my dad when he takes pictures at events he was working or volunteering at. Like I said, I'm not a professional, but I'm an enthusiastic amateur. My wife left me for a coworker about 6 months ago. I was completely blindsided and angry. I guess her family all knew she wasn't happy and was planning on leaving me for him. And even though I thought I had cultivated good relationships with all of them, none of them thought to give me a heads up. She took all her things and moved out. We were separated and she made it clear that we were getting divorced. She left everything she didn't care about, including our wedding pictures. I took it upon myself to clean her out of my life. I burned any physical photographs I had of her, and I deleted all the pictures I had taken of her for our entire 10-year relationship. She was involved in a car accident last month and passed away. Her family asked me if I could please send them pictures of her for the memorial. They basically didn't have any from the last 15 years. I told them that I had gotten rid of everything. They lost it. I'm an a-hole for destroying all of her pictures for the last part of her life. They have a couple of wedding pictures and pictures from high school. I fail to see how any of this is on me. She didn't want our wedding pictures, and I didn't want to see pictures of her when I was on my phone or computer. I talked to my parents about it, and they were more gentle. They don't think I'm an a-hole like her family does, but they think I could have stored the pictures on a USB drive or something. My friends are split. Some understand I wasn't being petty or anything, but some think I'm an a-hole for getting rid of all her pictures. To be absolutely clear, I destroyed the pictures months before her death. I did not destroy them as some sort of vindictiveness when that happened. And her family could have taken as many pictures of her as they wanted. Not the a-hole. What are we all supposed to do? Keep little USB drives labeled with each of our exes in case they happen to die in a car crash and their family didn't take any pics? She cheated on you. She left. You never intended to have any contact with her again. You have no reason to keep her image in your life. Her family chose not to take any pictures of or with her for 15 years. I'm very sorry for their loss, but it's not rational to have expected you to keep these photos. I'm sure they are acting now out of grief and disappointment, and their anger in that situation is somewhat predictable. But I don't know how your friends can be calling you an a-hole. I say not the a-hole. I also got rid of all photos of my ex-husband and I when we split up. I literally have no photos at all of us, not even on a USB, and I'm totally okay with that. You had no idea that she would pass away. It's just one of those crazy situations. Not the a-hole. You were under no obligation to keep all the pictures. If she hadn't passed away, no one would have cared the photos were gone. You couldn't have known her family had no photos and that they might have taken the photos instead of destroying them. I am not rich. I still have to work very hard for my money. That being said, I do earn over $200,000 in an average year. My kids are out of university and working, but are having trouble purchasing houses. Even with government programs and such, the housing market is crazy. I have substantial savings, and I tend to blow my money on random toys I want. Like I said, I work hard, and on my time off, if I feel like restoring old cars for fun, I will. My kids approached me about help getting a house. If they can go into a purchase with 25% down, they can save on fees and get a better rate. I thought about it and agreed to lend them the money in return for equity in the purchase. For example, if my daughter buys an $800,000 house and I lend her $200,000, then I own 1/4 of the house. If she sells it for $1 million, then I would get $250,000 back, since I would own 1/4 of the equity. She said I was being ridiculous and that I was an a-hole for not just giving her the money, or at least having it be an interest-free loan. My son took me up on the offer and bought himself a moderate home. Between a first-time homebuyers program, my investment, and his and his partner's savings, we managed to buy a house for them with almost a 50% down payment. My daughter is still calling me an a-hole for taking advantage of her brother and is just going to buy a condo she can afford on her own. Am I the a-hole? You're the a-hole. You're saying it's a loan, but then you're also saying it's an investment. You can't have it both ways. Don't act like you are lending your kids money when really you are just investing in real estate. Is nobody else hung up on OP saying they're not rich but make $200K a year? Also, I know it's just an example, but I really hope your daughter doesn't buy an $800K home if that's out of her means. You'd be the a-hole if you let her do that without talking to her. Although you are technically not the a-hole, your kids will never get ahead, not be able to sell the house and move. Your loan is more of an investment and needs to be treated as such, which makes you the a-hole. Why? If you have a 25% stake in the house and expect a 25% return without paying for upkeep, property insurance, property taxes, improvements, maintenance, etc., this makes you more of a loan shark than a parent. If you want to be equitable, then you would consider paying 25% of all those things. Otherwise, your kids are out a lot more than your 25% cut as they pay for your loan increase.